This is the Paycheck to Daycheck Reselling Podcast.
I'm Liz.
And I'm Ashley.
Together, we have been making money online collectively for over 10 years.
Our mission is to help you start, learn, and grow a reselling business and to inspire you to turn your paycheck into a daycheck.
The world is changing, and we want to help you change with it.
Welcome back to another episode of the Paycheck to Daycheck podcast. My name is Ashley, and today we are going to be talking about integrity in your reselling business and why it matters. So this is kind of a hot button topic for me. I guess it kind of started to become a passionate thing for me when, kind of back in 2020, when some things were going on in the reselling community that I started to take notice of. And I guess integrity is important to me because of probably the way that I was raised by my parents, the jobs that I've had, prior to becoming a reseller and the stigmas that were attached to those jobs, like door-to-door sales and the car business. It's easy to, conjure up kind of like a stigma attached to those professions. Again, the lack of integrity that I see sometimes inside of this community, and also the desire that I have to help other people, and specifically resellers. So, don't get me wrong though, integrity is something that I think that's ongoing, that we're constantly working on. And I don't believe that anyone has perfect integrity 100% of the time. So this is not going to be me preaching to you about how, I am perfect in my integrity and I never falter, that I never say I'm going to do something and then don't do it, because I do that all the time. I do that, more often than I would like to admit. But, integrity is something that you should be working on. It's an ongoing thing. So we're going to dive kind of deep into it. I've been thinking about, examining some of these topics and ideas a little bit deeper than just surface level stuff. I hope that's okay with you guys. And, if you want to join in on the conversation, if you have questions or, your own ideas that you want to chime in, definitely please reach out to us, whether that's, on Instagram, if you're listening to the podcast, or, if you're watching on YouTube, definitely leave a comment under the episode so we can kind of continue the integrity conversation. Okay, so first of all, what even is integrity? Integrity is, by definition, the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles. Basically, it is doing what you say you're going to do and, just honoring your word. And why is this important? Specifically, why is this important to us? Why does this even matter? So I personally think that it's important in the reselling community because we have the type of community that learns by watching other people. So if you are learning as a newer reseller from someone who isn't operating in integrity, maybe even on purpose, the chances are that you might end up operating without integrity is higher, and you might not even know that you're doing it because you're just kind of mimicking what you're seeing and following the lead of someone that you are, being mentored by or looking up to. There's also a couple more reasons that we're going to get into a little bit later in the episode. Within this episode, I am going to talk mostly about self-integrity, although, I could give countless of examples of lack of integrity within the community that I've witnessed myself. But I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole, to be honest with you. I feel like, we tend to seek advice when we are most vulnerable and most without knowledge. So that leaves us vulnerable to, like I said before, mimicking the things that other people are doing or learning from them. Hopefully this episode will get you to stop and think about the people that you're watching, even, us. Do we have your best interests at heart? Do we have your best interests in mind? Do you trust our intentions? And you should be asking this of every person that you come across that you are latching yourself onto, quote unquote. whether that's in your dating life or, people in maybe, if you have a 9 to 5, like people in your corporate job, bosses, mentors, even friends, do they have your best interests in mind? Okay, so let's talk about some examples of times that you might not be operating in integrity with yourself. All right. So an example of this would be saying that you're going to wake up at 5 and setting your alarm to do so, but then, hitting the snooze till like 7, or, saying that you're going to get 30 listings up today and then falling short of that listing goal. So these little promises that you make to yourself and fall short on, they start to add up, and then those start to chip away at our belief in ourselves, and we start feeling this like loss of power. And very rarely do we realize that that's where the feeling is coming from, is the lack of integrity because of the little promises that we're breaking to ourselves or maybe even to other people. But this is where it stems from. All right. So when you start to overpromise and underdeliver to yourself or to other people in your life, this is what a lack of integrity is. And it also tends to snowball. So, it might start with setting your alarm at 5 a.m., like I said, and hitting snooze until 7. And maybe you do that the next day, and maybe you do that the next day. And then it falls into, like your business life, and then more into your personal life. You tell your partner you're going to do something, and then you don't end up doing it. And it kind of hides itself in our life. It sort of veils itself because we don't like to admit when we're wrong, right? Like that's our ego. We don't want to be wrong. We don't want to admit that. We don't want to feel bad about ourselves, and we don't want to look bad. That is ego. In addition to that, when we don't keep these promises to ourselves and to other people and are out of integrity, we are absolute masters at coming up with reasons why. So I hit the snooze button this morning instead of waking up right at 5 because, I went to bed late. I had a long weekend. I had something come up last night and I actually had to get some work done and I didn't go to bed on time. I didn't list my 30 items today because something else came up. I had to run to the grocery store. I had to do this. I had to do that. X, Y, Z. It doesn't really matter. But we are masters at coming up with these reasons for not keeping the promises to ourselves or other people. So when we do these things and when we come up with these excuses, it's just like I mentioned before, it's chipping away at your self-confidence and your self-belief and like self-worth. And it also is just going to be reinforcing the thoughts and beliefs that you're a liar and you don't keep promises to yourself or to others. And that might sound really harsh, but it's the truth. And the more that we do this, and like I said before, it's snowballing and it's going to leak into other areas of your life. The more that you reinforce this idea with these little broken promises, the more it becomes a vicious cycle and the more it continues. Okay, so now that we know what integrity is, what a lack of integrity looks like, this is all fine and well, Ashley. Now what? How do I fix it? How do we get back into integrity? I don't want to keep doing this. I don't want to keep breaking promises to myself. So now what? What do I do next? You have to, as simple as it sounds, and it's going to sound absurdly simple, but I promise you it's actually a lot harder in practice than it sounds. So you really have to let go of yesterday. You have to let go of the past. You cannot beat yourself up about the promises that you made and you didn't fulfill. You need to be able to start fresh today, right now, blank slate. Thoughts and feelings and, the way that we've been conditioned and raised. So in addition to that, if you have made promises to other people and you've fallen short, you need to quickly address that, clean it up and move forward, as hard as it might be. Again, the ego is telling us that we don't want to be wrong. We don't want to look bad in front of others. We don't want to look bad to other people. But the important thing is really to address it head on, apologize, and then reevaluate to see how you can do better next time. I've said this multiple times before, but how you do one thing is how you do everything. Let that sink in for a second. How you do one thing is how you do everything. So if you slack off at, your 9 to 5 job and, you kind of wander in a little bit late and, maybe, well, I can't be late today because I was late yesterday. And if I'm late too many days in a row, they're going to notice. But I can get by like doing, the bare minimum work just so they don't catch on. And I'm just squeaking by. How you work in your 9 to 5 is how you're also going to work on your reselling business. Maybe not at first, but it will leak into your reselling business eventually. So if it leaks into your reselling business, it is very likely to also leak into your personal life, like I mentioned before. So how you do one thing is how you do everything. Asking yourself the question, and I'm going to read this because it's a little bit of a tongue twister. I didn't do what I said I was going to do. So what do I need to change so I can do it? Do I need to focus my discipline? Do I need to change my schedule? Do I need more support? Do I need, more knowledge? Do I need assistance in some area? You need to figure out what is holding you back from doing what you say you're going to do and then making those changes, actively making those changes so it doesn't continue to happen. So if you are continuously, saying that you're going to list 10 items a day and you continuously do not hit that goal, what are the reasons why you're not hitting that goal? Not the excuses. I don't want the excuses. I want to know what are the reasons why. At the beginning of the year, for me, a lot of the reasons why I wasn't hitting my listing goals every day were for, more of like my personal life. It had to do with my personal life. We had the puppy, which, is a really darn cute excuse, but he's also an excuse. I needed to manage my time a little bit better to make sure that he was tired out, at the point in the day that I had time to get my listings done, making sure that I was organized with like groceries and dinner and stuff like that. And that starts on like Sunday for me. So I need to make sure that I have a plan for the week on Sunday. So I know what I'm getting on Monday when I have time to go to the grocery store for like, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, sometimes Thursday, depending on what we're having. And then I can go to the store again on Wednesday, just like run real quick and grab the next couple things for the next few days. So I'm not at the store. I'm not leaving the house to go to the grocery store every single day. That takes so much time. And that's time that I could be spending listing. So if you can kind of like backtrack and reverse hack why you are not doing the things that you say you're going to do. So maybe for you, it is, like hitting snooze on your alarm. You say you're going to get up at 5 or 6 or whatever, whatever time it is. And you keep hitting snooze and then you end up sleeping until 7 or 8 a.m. And, you're a reseller. You have your own business. It's not that big of a deal, right? Like you can get everything done in the amount of time that you have left in the day. It doesn't really matter, right? That you hit the snooze and you slept till 7 or 8, but it does because you told yourself that you were going to do it. So if you let that slide, what else are you going to let slide throughout your day? I think another important question to ask yourself, let's go back to the listing thing. Asking yourself this question, at what point in the day did you know that you were going to fall short of hitting your listing goal of 10 items? And if it was like by 12 o'clock noon, you still have a lot of time throughout the day. But if you knew at that point at 12 that you weren't going to hit your listing goals for the day, instead of, kind of lying to ourselves like, oh, I'll get it done. Like I'll have time. Like maybe your time was before noon. Like maybe that's all the time that you had to get them done. And you're not really going to have time anytime after noon to get them done. So we're just kind of lying to ourselves like, I'll make time. I'll figure it out. I'm still going to get them done. Instead of being honest with ourselves and reevaluating, sometimes we lie to ourselves even more and come up with this like delusional idea, like I'm going to make time. Well, you can't really like make more time. You need to, something else will end up suffering. And maybe that's another commitment that you've made to someone else or yourself. In addition to that, sometimes if, it's 12 o'clock noon and I know I'm not going to hit my 10 items for the day for whatever the reason might be, sometimes instead of taking some kind of action, I won't take any action at all. It's kind of like if I can't do it all, I'm going to do nothing. So it's important to not have that mindset either. So if you know at 12 o'clock noon that you're not going to be able to get all 10 of your items listed, be very honest with yourself and go back and look at why you're not going to be able to hit that goal. Maybe, your mom called and you talked to her on the phone for an hour, and, family time is important. It's important that you talk to your mom. That's being honest with yourself. So adjust your goal and say, okay, if I can't get all 10 done, what can I realistically get done today? And maybe it's just 2. That's okay. Maybe you just get 2 listings done. Something is better than nothing. So just reevaluate, readjust your goals, be honest with yourself, and then don't let it snowball into the next day. Maybe you wake up a little bit earlier because in case something else comes up tomorrow, you want to make sure that you get your 10 listings done before 12 o'clock noon when you're not going to have any time after that. All of this to say, you guys, that integrity isn't some virtue to continuously strive for, okay? It's the fundamental prerequisite to any increase in performance that you want. If you're having a hard time in your business right now, this might be hard to hear for some people, but if you're having a hard time in your business right now, you might be pointing at everything else as to why things aren't working. But instead, it really does come back to your word and what you give your word to. All right. So, again, I said it at the top of the episode, but I am going to say it again. None of us are perfect. None of us operate with 100% integrity 100% of the time. Things do happen. Things do come up, but I think it's really important that we strive for integrity, and especially in our business, because like I said before, there are people watching us. If you are not a newer reseller, if you've been doing this for a while, you might not even know, but there are probably other people watching you and watching how you run your business, watching how you operate. Your kids might even be watching you make promises to yourself every day. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And if you don't do those things, what happens next? How do you act? What do you do? Do you continue to not fulfill the promises to yourself, or do you try to do better the next time? I hope this episode was helpful for you guys. I know that some of it might have been a little hard to hear. I hope some of it has made you think harder about your business, integrity, what it means to you. If you have any thoughts, feelings, questions, please let us know. Again, we would be happy to continue this conversation in the comments if you're on YouTube. And if you're not, if you're listening to it on any of the podcast platforms, reach out to us on Instagram. We'll see you guys in the next one.